Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha Yam Prabhajantam Anapetyam Apetya Krityam Dvaipayano Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putreti Tam Mayatayo Taravo Vinidustam Sarvabhutam Manimanatoshmi Bhaktya Vihina Aparada Lakshay Shittascha Karmadita Rangamadye Kripa Tvam Sharanam Prapana Pinde Namaste Charanarabindam Bhajami Radham Aravinda Netram Smarami Radham Madhurashmitasyam Vadami Radham Karuna Bharatram Tato Mamanasti Katyena Chapi Kapi. I first of all offer millions and millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev. Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarasarashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And the same again millions and millions of times unto the lotus feet of our most beloved Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarasarashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And all the Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, Dandavat pranams. So we've been working our way through the fourth canto, and each morning I've been trying to show the entirety of the Bhagavatam in its fullness and examining the continuous threads of principally Bhakti Devi and the teachings of Mahaprabhu. So these two essences are running, streaming through the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. This is according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and my Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. So if we just look for a moment at the topics within the 12 cantos, just very, very briefly, so that we can get some kind of overview initially of where this fourth canto is fitting in. So in the first canto, there's questions by the sages, and then there's Narad and Vyas Samvad, and then there's the Ashvatam pastime, and then there's the prayers by Queen Kunti, and then there's Bhishma Dev leaving his body, and then it's described Krishna leaves Hastinapura. That's one chapter. Another one is that he enters Dwarka. This is a beautiful description. This is setting the scene. This is setting the picture, if we can have a picture of the Bhagavatam. And then it's Dhritarashtra leaving this world. And then it's the Pandavas leaving this world. And then it's about the birth of Parikshit and Parikshit's rule and his confrontation with Kali Maharaj. And then at the very, very end, the last chapter, 19th chapter, is the entrance of Shukadev. So this is like the first canto. Then the second canto are explanations by Shukadev on the Virata Rupa, on the Chatushloki in the 9th chapter. And there's so many prayers by Shukadev Goswami explaining what is the principal purpose of life. So this is in the second canto. Third canto, Vidura is meeting Maitreya. And then there's beautiful discussion, and first of all he meets Uddhava. Then there's beautiful discussion here. This is inspiring us towards Krishna. Uddhava's such a close associate of Krishna. And then Vidura is directed to go and meet Maitreya. And then Maitreya starts to explain the whole lineage coming from Lord Brahma and the creation. This is where it really begins, in about the 12th chapter of the third canto. This explanation of the creation. Maitreya is beginning at creation. He talks about time. He talks about the manifestation of the day and the night, etc. And at this point, then the manifestation of Swayambhuva Manu and Satarupa in the middle of the third canto. And then for the rest of the third canto, there's the beautiful pastime of Varahadev and Hiranyaksha. And then the other sons of Diti are born. This is all in the third canto, and then in the fourth canto, where we're up to now, the genealogical table is explained in the first part, the first chapter. We explain that. catching up, making everything in sync with what's happened previously. It's not just sporadic, is what I'm trying to explain. And then the first pastime that Dhruva explains, again, it's all bound up within the family lineage coming from Swayambhuva Manu, of Daksha and his yagya and his offense to Lord Shiva and Sati, this pastime. And then after that is Prthu Maharaj, who is the son of Uttanapad. Uttanapad is one of the sons of Swayambhuva Manu, so again the thread is there. And then after Prthu Maharaj, then is Venu described principally. There are other kings in between, Anga, etc. But then it's Vena that's described. And then after Vena and the churning of his limbs comes Prthu Maharaj, where we're up to at the moment. And then after Prthu comes the other progenitor, who is a grandson of Prthu Maharaj, who is Prachinabari. So still we're in the same lineage. And then his sons, the 10 Prachetas. So this takes us to the end of the 4th canto. Then in the 5th canto, again it's the son of Swayambhuva Manu, it's Priyavrata. And then it's the pastimes of Rishabdev. And then it's the pastimes of Jad Bharat. And then it's the description of all the planetary systems. This inquiry is prompted by Parikshit Maharaj. And then coming into the 6th canto, the 6th canto, Parikshit Maharaj wants to know, after he's just heard about the hellish planets in the 5th canto, well, is there any way out of here? Are we all destined for this shocking situation in the hellish planets? And then Shukadeva Goswami begins to describe the beautiful pastime of Ajamil. So Ajamil goes for about 4 or 5 chapters there in the 6th canto. And then after that there is pastimes of Indra and the Narayan Kavacha, but it's all connected. And then after that is Chitraketu, Vritrasura, yes. This whole pastime, very beautiful, carrying right the way through, almost to the end of the 6th canto. So you get the sections. Once you get the sections like this, we should actually have a diagram of a whole clock with the whole 12 hours and the 12 cantos and each section, so that we can visualize the entirety. Then in the 7th canto, it's principally about Prahlad Maharaj and Hiranyakashipu. Then there's prayers at the end in Varnashram, etc. And then in the 8th canto, it's Bali Maharaj. And what else is in the 8th canto? But how does it? You should all have one of these. If you want one, just send me a mail and I'll send it to you. And I have on this all the chapters written, linked in colors. So they're grouped in sections. So you can stick them on the wall, and after a year or so, then you'll be very fluent in actually all the different details of the Bhagavatam. Once we get these details fixed, then it's just a question of filling in the different sections. Then this is only the external aspect of the Bhagavatam, of course. But if we don't have the external, how are we going to get the internal? So this is just externally trying to catch it in the palm of our hand. Yes, it's the pastimes about the demigods and the demons. And churning the ocean of milk is in the 8th canto. Then the 9th canto are many histories and pastimes. Durvasa Rishi, Ambarish, Ramchandra and Maharaj Nemi. And at the very end of the 9th chapter, because many dynasties have been described by Parikshit, then he's describing the Yadu dynasty. And then Parikshit, he takes interest in that because he's from that Yadu dynasty. And then he inquires about Krishna in the Yadu dynasty. Then it begins the 10th canto. And the first 5 chapters of the 10th canto are principally about Mathura and Kamsa and the dungeon, Vasudev, Devaki, etc. in the dungeon. And then there's about 32, 33 chapters of Braj. And these are the sweetest pastimes. This is the Prayojan Tattva. So see how it's all just, see the flow, see the current of it, how it's linking up. It's not just all separate, sporadic. And then the pastimes in Vrindavan, and then after this, there's Akrura and Mathura, And then there's the pastimes in Dwarka. The 10th canto has 90 chapters, so it's a lengthy volume. And then in the 11th canto, it's the Nava-Yogendras. And then the Yadus are retiring to Prabhash, and it's the whole demise of Krishna's Yadu family. And then it's instructions to Uddhava. Most of the 11th canto consists of these instructions to Uddhava. And then at the very end of the 11th canto, Krishna finally leaves. And then in the 12th canto, this is like Shukadeva is describing the deterioration in this age of Kali. And then all the different lineages that deteriorate, but still it's connected by the families. It's showing how all the families just decline completely. And then Shukadeva leaves, and then there's the Puranic literatures are described, and then the beautiful pastime of Markandeya Rishi. And then there's a summary description of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's the whole Bhagavatam, just in the palm of our hands. So we should be gradually becoming familiar with at least all the topics, and then how to fill them all in daily. Because this, without drinking this beverage daily, how can we expect to navigate through this material world each day without the manual, without the guidebook? The guidebook is the Bhagavatam. And it's stamped, authorized by Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Mata idam tatradaro na praha. So the current of Mahaprabhu is also present, sanctioned completely within the pages of the Bhagavatam. So how could we ignore it? How could we gloss over it? How could we minimize it in our daily activities, in our daily lives? So try somehow. In ISKCON, we used to have a class every single day on the Bhagavatam. It was very nice to go through the Bhagavatam methodically like that. So we haven't been going through in excessive detail in all of these different topics. I've just been basically touching on them and making references to them and about them. So we've been discussing the incredible pastimes of Prthu Maharaj. Prthu Maharaj is the first earthly king. Well, Dhruva Maharaj is described also. He rules for 36,000 years. But Prthu Maharaj is a Shaktiyavesh avatar. So his kingship is exemplary. Yesterday we heard how he milked Mother Earth. I mean, what a phenomena to actually have the ability to chase Mother Earth in space, for a start, to understand why Mother Earth was not actually giving the grains and the herbs, etc., and chastising her, and then milking her, then all the demigods and the other personalities milking Mother Earth also, getting all the jewels, etc., that they needed for subsistence in the earth. So this is, and then Maharaj Prthu, we heard yesterday, he was organizing the towns and the villages and the whole infrastructure of the planet Earth. And this is actually heralding the beginning of the Treta Yuga. Dhruva Maharaj, he ruled for 36,000 years. 36,000 years is a time span within such a yuga. But Prthu Maharaj, he is on the threshold coming into Treta Yuga. The yugas don't, the age spans don't immediately take place. It's a gradual, like, diminution of all those good qualities at the end of such a yuga. It's not like explicit. With the advent of Kali, it actually is explicit with Krishna leaving the planet, and the Kali Maharaj takes dominion, but the actual environment doesn't immediately take effect until some hundreds of years afterwards, when it becomes really, degraded, like in Kali, for example. But the other ages are similar. Like there's an overflow from each age.
So Kali Maharaj was born thousands of years before Krishna. So there is also.
Where does it say that? Oh, really? Really? But he only manifests any potency. He can only manifest any potency. When Dharma becomes completely strangled, when Dharma is no longer able to raise its head, then Kali Maharaj, because he's weakened anything to do with Dharma. Powerless, yes, until Krishna actually leaves the planet. As soon as Krishna leaves the planet, the very instant he leaves the planet, then he begins to manifest his potency. But this pastime of Prthu Maharaj is very inspiring in the sense that there are so many teachings within each of these topics that I've just very briefly just touched on. But at least if we have the picture of the Bhagavatam, then as Srila Jiva Goswami shares with us, we can catch it in the palm of our hand. Because when we read those sandarbhas, particularly the Priti Sandarbha, even if you don't have time to read all the other sandarbhas, but the Priti Sandarbha is so sweet. It's all about love. And Jiva Goswami is extracting all the parts of the Bhagavatam, all about love and the different loving relationships, and culminating in the love between Radha and Krishna that are described in the 10th canto, in the Rasa Panchadiya chapters. But he's pulling out all these different sections from Ritrasura and his prayers and so on, all the way through. And you get the impression from reading that he has it in the palm of his hand. He has this Bhagavatam. So I would think that would indicate great success in life if we had made some progress in attaining that mentality of having the Bhagavatam so alive for us, so ready, accessible for us, so that we can reference it under any circumstance. Whatever situation is going on, we can reference different parts of the Bhagavatam because it explains everything. There's nothing that we cannot, there's no question you can ask about anything that can't find its relevance in the Bhagavatam. A clear answer. And questions that we don't even have are answered in the Bhagavatam. So it's such an essential part of our education. And I was describing yesterday this little booklet that ISKCON has put out, but it's very helpful. It just spreads it all out and gives an analysis of all the cantos up to canto 12. So it's helpful. Not that we should stay stuck in the Gyan. We should absorb it, appreciate it, and then dive fully immerse ourselves in the 10th canto. It's the 10th canto that's going to affect our hearts. That's going to soften our hearts. It's the embrace of the 10th canto, that madhurya that is only described in the 10th canto. All these other 9 cantos are called Sambandha Gyan. They're building a relationship between the Jiva and Krishna so that we can access the 10th canto. The 10th canto is the place our heart is going. I said right at the very beginning this morning that the essence is Bhakti Devi, and that Bhakti Devi is manifested on the pages of the 10th canto. It's the sweetness, the madhurya, this devotion of the gopis for Krishna. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes it as the highest exhibition of devotion in existence is performed by the gopis towards Krishna. So this, Ramya Kachit Upasana Braja Vardu Vargena Vakalpite. These Radha Ramanis, the gopis, that's the place we actually want for our mature meditation. But if we haven't already covered these 9 cantos, then something's going to be amiss, something's going to be lacking. So coming to our topic today, Prthu Maharaj is meeting with the 4 Kumaras. So now it's described that Prthu Maharaj was actually speaking with the citizens. And then the 4 Kumaras arrive. Vishnu, Krishna, had already told him previously that he would be visited by these great saintly persons. Now, when Prthu Maharaj receives the Kumaras, this is a very important, profound lesson for us in etiquette. It's described that while the citizens were praising Prthu Maharaj, the 4 Kumaras, who were as bright as the sun, arrived there. Seeing their effulgence, Prthu and others could recognize who they were as they descended from the sky. Thus the king and the citizens immediately got up to receive them with the eagerness of a conditioned soul attracted to sense objects. Now this is verse 3 of chapter 22. I just want to read you the very interesting commentary here Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives. An analogy is given to illustrate Prthu standing up. I've said this before, but I'll just read it directly from here. Prthu rose up as if to regain his life airs which had left his body on seeing the effulgence of the Kumaras. Now Smriti says, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes, when elders approach, the life airs of the young move upwards out of their body, physically. By standing up in respect and greeting the elders, the life airs return to the body. So this is... Did you?
Oh, yeah.
Same thing?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, it's so good. It's so good. Yes, yes. But it's so helpful. And it's so endearing to the atmosphere. If you're trying to create a conducive atmosphere to speak these types of topics, it has to be a respectful atmosphere. If there's some discord and there's some gross, rudeness or something like that, it can totally fracture the atmosphere. I've been in assemblies where something has been really off, and the entire atmosphere that has been created by the well-wishing prayers of the sadhus present, is completely like broken and lost. And this means that the channel to the hearts of all these special truths is no longer open. It's closed. This is the idea of etiquette. Dandavat, Sudevi's mother ki jai. Radhe Radhe. Hari Bol. Welcome. Welcome. Nice to see you. I've forgotten your name. Manorama. Manorama Didi ki jai. Manorama.
It's pleasing to the one.
Okay, Manorama. Very beautiful. Okay, Vichitra? I got that one. Manorama. You're going to teach me how to speak properly. I'm very blessed. Without your association, how will I, Huh?
Yeah, but
Radharaman, he's enjoying the Radharaman. And it's the Radharaman is enjoying the Radharamanis. Not the Ramanis, no.
The Ramanis.
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 Not the Radharamanis.
I can't tell you publicly because of the topic. I can
Okay.
tell you in private.
Okay. Be merciful. Thank you for telling me all these things.
Vichitra's senior to you, so she can say.
Is she?
In age, yes.
Is she?
Yeah, you wouldn't know. She's like eternal.
What, she's 70 years old?
71.
Is she really? Oh my God.
I know.
She is right up there.
But she's like
Okay.
running upstairs. And
Now I'm carrying straw in my teeth every time I meet Chitri. No question. We're talking about etiquette here. And it starts with physical age. Ultimately, it's the qualification of bhakti. But we also, age and ashram is also very much pertinent to that. I'm not good at Sanskrit. Just a fact. Thus the king, lazy. Thus the king and the citizens immediately got up to receive them with the eagerness of a conditioned soul attracted to the sense objects. How eager are we for the sense objects? Oh, food, a feast is going to be served. Quick, quick, quick. The sense objects are completely like right there. Prthu, with shoulders lowered in humility, offered them seats, worshipped them according to the scriptures, washed their feet, and sprinkled that water over his head. There's a beautiful painting of this. Have you seen this painting by Ramprasad? Beautiful. They're sitting on a beautiful marble throne, and Prthu Maharaj is very carefully. Prthu Maharaj is wearing like a deer skin. Yes, that's it. Beautiful, beautiful. That's exactly the painting, yes. It's done by Ramprasad in Australia. Washed their feet and sprinkled that water all over his head. Thus he showed how to receive a saint. There's a science with guru-disciple relationship. There's a certain tangible flow that can be manifest from the guru's heart when the guru is completely satisfied. And initially it's offering proper respect. If you offer proper respect to anyone, you're going to endear that person. Like we see in all Indian households, the son will immediately take the dust of the father every single day. Even if the son is 60 years old, he'll take the father's dust every day. Immediately. Then the father is able to give because a certain channel of sweetness is open. These life airs become open. So it's a subtle reality. Huh? What did she say?
Mothers as well.
Yeah, parents, both parents.
Both parents, yes, of course. Mothers also. And the brother to the elder brother. And the sister also to the elder brothers. They all, like there's so many descriptions of Krishna meeting, and they will all offer and receive different. Krishna will be giving blessings to some, he will be receiving some, he will be worshipping some. All very beautifully ordered. So no confusion. Very beautiful. So this is creating a very respectful, authoritative atmosphere. In that type of environment, you can open your heart and receive these truths very easily with no obstructions. But if there's all kinds of hypocrisy and disturbance and stuff like that, it just creates such a blockage in the consciousness of receiving these things nicely. There's such an importance that we should place on respectful behavior. It's so important. Now Prthu praises the Kumaras and inquires from them, "What kind of pious activities have I performed to have your darshan, which is rare even for mystic yogis? One can achieve anything which is rare to obtain in this world and the next, and one receives the favor of Shiva and Vishnu. Although you travel to all planetary systems, people cannot see or know you, just as all people, including Brahma and other creators, cannot understand the Supersoul." Now he glorifies the Kumaras with very beautiful words, again endearing them to give him sweet instructions. So then finally, what is the most sweet way to approach a senior devotee particularly? Is to ask them a question. Asking a question indicates that you feel that you are inferior and that person is superior. So by that question and answer, just like Parikshit to Shukadev, by that asking a question like that, you're endearing that person immediately to actually give you some jewels from their heart. This is the process. So Prthu Maharaj, he asks a very beautiful question. Right at the end, he says, "For you are all Atmaramas and make no mental concoctions about what is auspicious or inauspicious. Therefore I ask you, well-wishers, by what means will there be benefit for those suffering in this world?" Very simple question. You couldn't get more broad than that. You can go anywhere with that. What is the means of suffering in this world? So now
like the precursor there, he said, because you make no mental concoctions. So there he's implying that I can trust you because you don't concoct anything.
Yes, Dharma project.
Everything is based on Shastra.
Yes.
You're not
Speculating anyway.
Mahaprabhu had the same when he asked Ramananda Rai. And also to Sanatan, these conversations when he was talking, he was like,
Yes.
I don't want to hear anything from you unless you have foundation.
Shastra Pramana.
So right there he set it up.
Yes.
You don't make any mental concoctions, so I can
Right.
hear from you faithfully.
Fully.
Yeah.
Now Sanat Kumar begins to answer Prithu's question. Sanat Kumar is the elder of the four Kumars. Prthu Maharaj's speech was meaningful, appropriate, concise, sweet, and satisfied. Sanat Kumar smiled and replied as follows: "I have been very nicely questioned by you, who are always thinking of the welfare of others. Although you know everything, you inquire because that is the behavior of a sadhu. Just as you desire our association, we desire yours." It's saying here. And then beneficial meetings are discussions with questions and answers. That's something else. So Prthu asked what was beneficial for himself. Now the Kumaras answered, "You already have what is most beneficial." So it's described now, the Kumaras are going to describe about detachment. Gyan, Mishra, Bhakti. So this is important instructions to appreciate. And initially he's talking about having faith and being inquisitive about the process of bhakti and applying bhakti yoga in life and worshipping the Lord as the topmost devotee. This is all aspects of detachment. regularly hearing and chanting the Lord's glories, not associating with persons simply interested in sense gratification or money, not associating with associates of materialists nor accepting their goals, being disgusted with the taste of sense enjoyment, being satisfied in the self, molding one's life so that one cannot live in peace without drinking the nectar of the Lord's qualities. It's very beautiful. Being non-violent. These are all capsulated instructions coming from Sanat Kumar. Following in the footsteps of the great acharyas, remembering and tasting the sweetness of the excellent pastimes of the Lord, practicing yama, niyama without material desires, not criticizing others and their methods of religion. Most religions actually, common religions, popular religions, are mostly fear-based, which means those practicing them are in great misery because they're fear-based, even their religion. It's only the Vedic teachings that are lovingly based at heart, with a mood of... What? I just read this in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Bhagavat Purana, by the way. Do you want to...
Others or their methods of religion. It seems to be a very, very common thing that Gaudiya Vaishnavas, including all of our acharyas, have done from the beginning, where there's so many different paths, and they say this is not really a religion, and very heavy condemnation, criticism, and everything else. So how do you reconcile that instruction with the realistic example of Gaudiya Vaishnava acharyas and those who follow them?
Well, I'll just take one Gaudiya Vaishnava acharya, that's Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and he says that in any religion, even if it's an adharmic religion, practically the sensitive perceiver can see one grain of dharma within that religion that actually began that cult or that idea. There is something there, and the expert sadhu should try to draw that out. He also says, just getting to your question, but he also says that we should never ever dismantle someone's belief in whatever they have, but we should build upon that belief. If you take away your belief, say for example in Christianity and the precepts there, if you try to strip that, then he's left with nothing. He's left with no foundation to build anything else on. So you strengthen his already present beliefs, but you take them much further. Gradually you increase that. So this is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's approach. There's no question of, I remember in the early days we used to be quite brutal, on different groups and so on. But actually this didn't get anyone anywhere. All it did was inflame our false egos and reduce them to practically running away 99% of the time. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur's mood is to always, to not destroy or not dismantle anything, but to build on whatever they have. If you take away that Shraddha, then they have nothing left. So that's Bhaktivinoda Thakur's opinion on this. But, we'll get into it another time. But there are many comments on Islam or Christianity, so.
Like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that everybody is following my path and they really respect.
Yes. Yes, so everyone is following, like Shashikala is saying from Bhagavad Gita, in all respects. What's the rest of that line, that verse?
I am death.
In all respects. So everyone is performing their various karmas according to their adhikar. And the devotee, which is what the question is here about not criticizing others, is that we should try to see what is the strength in every single individual. I explained a couple of days ago that Gurudev described that the pure devotee only comes to this planet to see the good in everyone. Jivera Surupoi Krishnera Nityadas. Everyone is a spirit soul. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur also describes the nature of a devotee. He says, everyone is a devotee. Some people know it and some people don't know it. So it's our duty to try and educate to the best of our ability. It's like if you look in history, the ancient Druids and so on, when they spread this cult from this Aryan teachings, they would first of all teach about Dharma. They first of all taught about worshipping the demigods, worship the trees, worship Mother Earth, worship the sun, etc. This is what they established in England and northern France and Lithuania and places like that. And then it was just the Christians. They called them pagans because they were worshipping, demigods basically. That was introduced by the Brahma rishis who were traveling across there. So that was the first introduction, just generate some respect for the planet that we live on. So we don't always have to go straight to the jugular and practically slay them. But we can just, encourage them to just be respectful people. If they're respectful, then perhaps they will start respecting the animals and stop killing the animals for a start, because that's usually the first elementary platform. You can't really get anywhere until you've got that covered.
Krishna does say in Bhagavad Gita that whatever one wants to put their faith in, he makes that faith strong.
Yes.
So I guess there has to be some level of respect for that, because that is...
This is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying. He's saying you should honor that. It's not that you submit to that or anything, but you don't dismantle it. Stuart.
Just on the topic of the fear and love concept, like inviting bhakti, I remember Prabhupada saying that everyone's got to where they're supposed to be, you gotta watch out, might die anymore. I think what I felt very reflective when Dr. Kerr was talking about the hellish planets, and that those were, I don't think it sounds like they're there for little children, or they're just a product of mind or whatever, but it kind of seemed like he was saying that wasn't really literally true, those sort of things. I mean, can you give some little bit of background on this, the fear love thing from a Shastric point of view, how we should see that from its
There are all these fearful injunctions, and also the hellish planets, which are an absolute reality. Yamaraj will come with his Yamadutas and drag you, if you don't have the neck beads on, the Nagapashu, down to those hellish regions. And they're all described in the 5th canto, and those are realities, and those are supposed to frighten you.
Well, Bhaktivinoda seemed to say that was just kind of there to scare people. That wasn't so much as a reality. I can't quote where he said that.
The word was allegory.
What's that?
The word is allegory. And there's been a big debate about that over time. At some point, in some place in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's writings, there was a suggestion that the hellish planets were just allegory.
Perhaps Bhaktivinoda Thakur, like all of our acharyas, is speaking in time, place and circumstance. Just like Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada would speak about the fall of the jiva in very loose language sometimes. But in his Shastra, in the 7th canto, for example, he says absolutely clearly, not a single soul falls ever from Vaikuntha. There's no question of this. So there's also no question of these descriptions in the 5th canto of the hellish planets as being allegorical. They are not. They are absolute. They are absolute. This is what happens. And they're there to actually try to somewhat intimidate the jiva. How else? You can use the force of fear. Gurudev used it all the time. All the acharyas use it all the time. We'd be sweating, traumatized in Gurudev's presence, trying to do something that he wanted us to do expertly when we weren't qualified to do it. But that fear would drive us. But that fear eventually becomes purified into absolute love when it's realized just like a teacher will put the fear of God, so to speak, into his students, But that's because he wants them to go ahead. He wants them to actually wake up. He wants them to actually be motivated. But the ultimate result is love and affection. But many of the religions, they don't go into the loving aspect. They mostly linger on this part of fearful redemption and so on, and hellfire and brimstone, and they carry on in that sort of vein without sufficient. But our Shastras, 50% of them are only about the loving pastimes between Radha and Krishna. That's a long topic. It's a good question. Simple and plain living is another teaching that Sanat Kumar gives. Tolerating dualities. Constant hearing of the Lord's qualities, which are like ornaments on the ears, with increasing bhakti, with increasing mood. Bhakti develops one's detachment from matter and attachment to the Lord. So we have two paths. One is called anartha nivritti, which is purifying our lower qualities, but arta means wealth. Arta, pravriti. Pravriti is like the positive path. So arta is the wealth. So as devotees, we're always looking to actually see what is the positive path in this topic that we're discussing now. Even if you meet someone of a different religion and so on, you look for the positive aspect in his lifestyle that you can extract to inspire him, to encourage him towards a more dharmic path. If we're always looking for this positive, there's not a lot of mileage just in crushing someone to dust every time. It doesn't really help you in develop a gentle mentality. Neither does it usually endear the person towards you. They just feel bereft, flattened. We used to do that a lot. I used to do that a lot. I hope I don't do it anymore. And now he's describing that the result of following this path of detachment, Gyan Vishwabhakta, is the destruction of the subtle body. The subtle body is mind, intelligence and false ego in the sense that it's attachment to this world. So this destruction of the subtle body, this means the external sense objects for one's own pleasure, and the internal disturbances like lamentation, the mind, and the obstacles in seeing Paramatma which existed previously. Thus, this is similar to the waking state in which one no longer sees the objects in a dream. This is how Sanat Kumar is explaining this. So then he goes on giving these very beautiful instructions to Prthu Maharaj, and completely Prthu Maharaj drinks these instructions and then understands fully the destruction of that subtle body within himself. Because later on, when he's leaving this world, it's like he's referencing these instructions that he's acquired to purify completely his subtle body. And then, after thus being enlightened by Sanat Kumar, who is well versed in scriptural knowledge, the king praised the Kumaras as follows. Formerly, he showed me his causeless mercy by indicating that you would come to my house. He's talking about Vishnu, Lord Vishnu's blessings. And now he's asking, what can he offer? What can he give as dakshin? He's saying that all my wealth, all my charity, everything that I have in my possession, I'm offering to you, along with my life, my wife, my children, home, furniture, kingdom, strength, land, and treasury. All is to be given to you. Only one who knows the principle of Vedic knowledge deserves to be the commander-in-chief, leader of the state, punisher and ruler of all planets. So this is about describing leadership. How did we get to that? So now Prthu Maharaj is describing how the Brahmanas must also be honored, and he speaks at length about the glorification of the Brahmanas. And it's described that there's another heading here titled The Glorious Rule of Prthu, and it's described that he was completely fixed in pure bhakti and was the chief amongst great personalities. He considered himself almost satisfied by the teachings about Atma. It says almost. He performed his duties according to time, place, and strength and financial position, all with the one aim to satisfy the absolute truth. This was to teach the people in general, to avoid lapses in following the rules of Varnashram, to avoid criticism of the path of bhakti, and to protect the confidentiality of pure bhakti. So this was the mood of Prthu Maharaj. Prthu always thought of himself as a servant of the Lord, who is the proprietor of everything. He dedicated the fruits of all his activities unto the Lord. Although Prthu was a householder, possessed kingdom and wealth, he never used his opulence for sense gratification and thus remained unaffected just like the sun. He performed all fruitive activities without attachment, and by his own desire produced 5 sons, Vichitsava, Drumakesh, Haryaksha, Dravina, and Vrika, in his wife Archi, and who embodied the qualities of devatas. And now it's going to be described in the last chapter about Prthu Maharaj, about him attaining his spiritual destination. So this is chapter 23 now we're up to. So I've skipped various parts of each chapter. My intention wasn't to go through everything, but we've got 10 minutes now to observe Prthu Maharaj's austerities. So I'll read directly from the Bhagavatam here. This chapter, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur entitles Prthu Attains the Lord. It's interesting, I've got these lists of all the chapter titles that you're welcome to have, and I've put Bhaktivedanta Swami's Prabhupada's titles on one side of the page and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's titles on the other side of the page, because quite often there's a different emphasis on the description of the chapter, so it's very helpful when you're just glancing at the chapter titles. So in Prabhupada's it's entitled Prithu's Going Back Home, and here it's entitled Prthu Attains the Lord. There's somewhat of a subtle difference there for us to consider. So this 23rd chapter, Prthu goes to the forest, practices austerities, worships the Lord, and giving up the planet of humans, goes along with his wife to Vaikuntha. So he leaves home and enters the forest, and there he underwent severe austerities according to the Vanaprastha rules, with unbroken vows, using the same effort with which he previously achieved victory over the earth. So it's not that he's going to use any different sort of determination to do these vows. As in his life, he performed these determined vows to protect the citizens, and now in the forest he's going to apply those same strengths to his, we can say bhajan, or his tapas. He ate only roots like radish and fruits, and sometimes ate only dry leaves. He began drinking only water without food for several months at a time. Finally, he only consumed air. So you could do these sorts of austerities. We might consider, while we're hearing about these Prthu Maharaj's amazing austerities, that all of the results of his austerities are obtained by us simply by chanting Hare Krishna in this age. This is the Yuga Dharma for this age. In previous ages, you would have to, as is being described here, that in summer he placed 4 fires around himself in the 4 directions, with the sun burning overhead. So we've all experienced Vrindavan summers, they're excruciating. So he would sit in the middle of 4 fires. This sort of tapasya is just, not even to be considered in this age. But our tapasya is simply to vibrate the holy name of the Lord regularly, daily. This is our yajna. This is the Yuga Dharma. During the monsoon season, he tolerated the torrents of rain. During the dewy seasons, he stood up with his neck in cold water and slept on the earth. Being tolerant, controlling words and senses, controlling sexual impulse and his life heirs, his only desire being to worship Krishna, he performed the highest austerities. Now there's a commentary here by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur I'm going to read. Though his purpose was to show people the Vanaprastha life, what was his intention in performing such severe austerities? Desiring to worship Krishna directly in the spiritual world, I will do these austerities. This is his vow. It has been seen that perfect Ragatmaka Bhaktas, such as Vishaka and other gopis, performed austerities to attain Krishna, according to the Vamana Purana and the Shrutis. So he's emphasizing the necessity of austerities. Krishna is pleased by austerities. So simply by our attempt to chant as much as we can fit into 24 hours conveniently between all the other activities we have to perform, then this is most pleasing to Krishna. By gradual perfection of austerities, he destroyed karma, developed a joyful heart, controlled the mind and senses by pranayam, and cut his bondage to the material world. Sometimes we see individuals performing austerities, but they don't become joyful, which means there's some difficulty there. Something is not actually correct in there. But the emphasis here is on his joyful heart by connecting with Krishna through his austerities, the power of his austerities. The best of men worship the Supreme Lord by the highest process called Adhyatma Yoga. And it's got in brackets here, Bhakti Yoga, which Sanat Kumar had taught. And it's described here in the commentary by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. There will also be a contradiction in the next chapter if Gyan Yoga as Adhyatmika Yoga is considered the highest process. Bhakti Yoga here is called Adhyatmika Yoga to keep it secret. So it's being called Adhyatmika Yoga, Adhyatma Yoga, in order to keep it and keep Bhakti Devi confidential. Bhakti Devi is very soft, very delicate, very warm, vigorous, charming. It's not something that can just be, broadcast the same way that Gyan Mishra Bhakti Yoga can be broadcast, or Astanga Yoga. It's more confidential, ultimately. By bhakti, filled with continual remembrance of the Lord, Prthu, his mind becoming Shuddha Sattva by service, developed intense Gyan, endowed with detachment, by which he destroyed the subtle body, which was a cause of doubt for Prthu. Having destroyed the concept of being his body, having realized the form of Paramatma, and being without desire for siddhis, Prthu destroyed his subtle body and then rejected Gyan. As long as one does not have attraction for the topics of the Lord, the Gyani will be attached to yoga siddhis and liberation. So Jiva Goswami gives this very beautiful analogy that when the enemy come to attack the city, the king, he hands out weapons to all the citizens to go and defeat the enemy. The enemy is like ignorance. But once the enemy has defeated, then all the citizens, they give their weapons back to the king. So the weapons are like Gyan. We use Gyan to defeat this demon of ignorance. Once the ignorance has been defeated, we don't have to hang on and become attached to the Gyan and keep rolling it out, keep substantiating, keep going to debates and meetings and so on and so on and so on. All about Gyan, 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 Gyan. It's very dry. We use the Gyan like a skier to push ourselves forward onto this path of bhakti. And once we're on that path of bhakti, then the path of Gyan, Mishra Bhakti, it has no appliance in the bhakti yoga path. We no longer need that. So we should relinquish that. Now it's described that he's merging his body with the air and the ether, and he's merging his mind and his senses. It's also describing Archie, that he finally, Prthu, gives up his body. It's saying that his subtle body left. And it's saying that then he attained his spiritual body, but it's saying that he was already situated in his spiritual body. Then it says, the great queen, Archie, his wife, whose feet should not have touched the ground, and thus was not suited for austerity, followed him to the forest. Although she became thin, she did not experience pain by living like a sage, serving with determination the vows of her intent husband, taking pleasure in his respect and touch of his hand. Seeing that the body of her merciful husband, master of the earth, was without life symptoms, after lamenting a little, she placed it on a pyre on the summit of a hill, performing the rites, taking bath in a lake, offering water to her husband of great fame, and offering respects to the 30 devatas. She circumambulated the pyre 3 times and entered the fire while meditating on the feet of her husband. Seeing her follow her husband, Prthu, who was the best of warriors, thousands of wives of the Devatas, capable of giving blessings, began praising her, as did the Devatas themselves. While drums of the Devatas sounded and the wives of the Devatas showered flowers, the Devatas spoke among themselves. The wives of the Devatas said, "Oh, she is most fortunate. She worshipped her husband, King of Kings, with her whole soul, just as Lakshmi worships Vishnu. That must be her traveling in the sky. See her following her husband, Prthu. Archie has surpassed us in inconceivable actions. What else is difficult to obtain for human beings of short lifespan on earth, who attain the abode of the Lord, which is free from material action and reaction?" So we are also in a similar situation in a sense. We've got a very short birth, and we have the opportunity to achieve the highest welfare for the soul in this very brief sojourn here. We have this opportunity now, if we grasp it. Having with great difficulty attained a human form of life suitable for liberation, a person who becomes attached to sense objects is certainly cheated and a killer of the self. So these are instructions for the sadhaks at the end of this beautiful chapter on Prthu Maharaj. Maitreya said, while the women were glorifying her, Archie reached the planet where her husband had gone. There Prthu, the best of knowers of the Lord, attained the shelter of the Lord. Then it's described he reaches his planet in Vaikuntha. Prthu was the best of devotees and a great authority, as described. I have described to you the story of Prthu, of splendid character, the person who with faith and attention reads, makes others hear, or hears with this great pure story of Prthu, will attain the abode that Prthu attained. The Brahmana becomes most learned, the kings become leaders of the world, and merchants become masters of cows, and laborers become the best of devotees. This is like something of a karma kand type of benediction in a sense, if you want these benedictions. These go along with hearing the beautiful pastime, but for the bhaktas, our desire is to engender devotion to Krishna. So the bhaktas are always hoping for this benediction. So then it's describing different sorts of benedictions will be offered. One should hear, make others hear, and recite this pure story of Prthu while giving up all other results in order to cultivate pure bhakti to the Lord. This is the final benediction. That without wanting any of these benedictions, we should just desire pure devotion to the Lord. O Vidura, I have explained this superhuman story indicating the greatness of the devotee. One should attain the destination of Prthu described in the story. Whoever hears or recites the story of Prthu daily with respect, avoiding material association, will attain rati to the Lord, whose feet are a boat for crossing the ocean of material existence. So that's the end of the pastime of Prthu Maharaj. So we've taken 2 days to very briefly go through the pastimes and touching just briefly on many of the lessons and jewels that can be gleaned from hearing and reciting that pastime. So Prthu Maharaj ki jai, Shri Gurudev ki jai, Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.